I'm Sean Fennessey, and this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about your boy Arthur Fleck.
Wow.
Today on the show, we are discussing Joker Folie, Deux, Todd Phillips' follow-up to the Oscar-winning 2019 film Joker. Joining me to do it is Van Lathan. Hi, Van.
What's up?
Couple of other notes before we start. I have a very special message from Amanda Dobbins. She wanted to say that she wants to honor the life of Chris Christopherson, the late great actor, singer, songwriter, activist, frankly one of the coolest Americans of all time. She also noted that he could get it all the way up until the day he died. That is a verbatim quote, and I'd like to thank her for sharing that from outside the halls of this space. Chris Christopherson, an actor I love, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, incredible banger of a movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Watch it immediately. Any other thoughts on Chris Christopherson?
I love him. Obviously, a lot of different movies. Stars Born had a second sort of wind in my life as Whistler.
Blade,
yeah. Whistler. And when I was a kid, another very big pop culture moment when Sinead O'Connor was going through her entire "Don't let the bastards get you down." He just always was there as a steadying voice, almost like this may be a little bit hyperbole, but I'm Van. I have to do hyperbole. Maybe like the conscience of Hollywood in a way.
I think that's a very smart way to describe it. Yes.
Like on the right side of things, cool guy, and it's a big loss. Long, fantastic life. I saw a picture of him in college in 1957, and you're like, Jesus Christ, he's a little older than I thought he was. He was rocking out to Buddy Holly and stuff. A life well lived. So, rest in peace, Chris Christopherson, man.
Very well said. Let's talk about this huge new movie that's come out, Joker Folie, Deux. We saw it last night. We saw it at a special IMAX presentation. It's once again directed by Todd Phillips. It's written by Scott Silver and Todd Phillips, just like the first film. It stars Joaquin Phoenix. It stars Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Stars Zazie Beetz. Harry Lawdy from Succession. He showed up. Brendan Gleeson. Catherine Keener. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stacked cast.
Yeah.
I'm going to briefly describe the setup for this movie, okay? So it's set 2 years after the first Joker film. Now in Arkham Asylum, and awaiting the trial for the murders of 5 of the people that he killed in the events of the first film, Arthur Fleck's Joker has become a symbol, whether he's an empty symbol or a meaningful symbol, of an uprising in Gotham. That there's a discontent and he stands in for it. So this movie uses a very unusual structure to portray Arthur's inner pain, and that structure is the movie musical.
Song, yeah.
There are a lot of song and dance numbers in this movie. Gaga's introduction into the movie gives it a certain kind of a flavor, but it still looks and feels very much like a Joker movie. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the year, though I have sensed that the anticipation has been waning since the Venice premiere and since some of the reviews have started to come out. But when we sat down last night, you were like, I'm really looking forward to this.
I was shocked at how excited I was once I sat in the chair to see the film.
Why?
The intrigue, the curiosity, where they could possibly go, the intersection of the Batman lore with this new take on examining all of these contemporary ideas that really seem to be pulled from our society in real time, where they would take that story. Lady Gaga, who's a performer I really like, when I sat down, I was like, despite whatever you thought about the first movie, and I'm not somebody who is such a pure soul that I couldn't appreciate the first movie for what it was. I know it's very popular to be like, oh, the movie represents everything that's bad with society, and therefore I hate it. I kind of don't feel that way.
But you were not a big fan of the first film.
Not a big fan. I wasn't a big fan just on the film itself. If I want to watch that movie, I'll watch There Will Be Blood. I'll watch Taxi Driver. I don't need it in my Batman world where I want to see batarangs. Okay, and people flying around and stuff. Or even the Joker is scheming and all of that stuff.
Right. Stop dipping your Batman peanut butter in my There Will Be Blood chocolate, is what you're saying.
Is what I'm saying.
Okay.
However, if I divorce myself from that and I just judge the movie, incredibly well acted, well-made film. There it is. This one I wanted to see how they would bring all of these things together to make their movie. I was very curious and excited to see it.
I was curious too. I really liked the first movie. I talked about it. I felt like I understood the first movie. I felt like the way that the kind of narrative around the movie got away from it, I found not confusing. It actually felt very representative of what it was like to be in America in 2019
Sure.
when everything became a kind of political pipe bomb and everything was either this is an incredible achievement in filmmaking or this is an incel manifesto and that there was no in between. I felt like it was very in between those two things. I think weirdly Todd Phillips has gotten better and better and better as a filmmaker, and that's a weird thing to say about the guy who made Road Trip and The Hangover, but I feel like he has really started to hone his craft in fascinating ways and is maybe making the movies more like the kinds of movies he wants to be making.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like he's mired in studio comedy world in particular. He's also found this kind of, kindred spirit in Joaquin Phoenix, another complicated, somewhat frustrated creative soul who's kind of always looking for a new challenge. I was definitely interested in this movie, definitely looking forward to it, like the trailer. As soon as the Venice reviews started coming out, I was like,
we're in trouble.
This is not exactly what you want to be reading about a movie. Nevertheless, try to go in with an open mind. So I ask you, what do you think of Joker Folie Do?
I don't get it. and I tried. And after the movie, during the movie, there's literally a moment where whatever they're trying to do, it just stops working on me.
Mm-hmm.
To where the curiosity has worn off. I know what I'm seeing now. I know what I'm watching now. And I'm like, this just is excruciating. This is like, it's tough. It's musical numbers that aren't fun to watch. It's poorly performed musical numbers. I think that's by design.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
But at the same time, I'm like, what's the deal? Like, there's nothing there for me. The film gets to a point at the end where you see what he's trying to do. By far the strongest part of the movie is the last 20 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes to me, where he makes his point. Todd Phillips makes his point about Arthur Fleck in the movie, and it ends in a way I didn't think that it would end. And then I talked to you a little bit after, and that gave me some more clarity in terms of what the goal of the filmmaker was.
So this is just my reading, but my sense of the movie, which I found at times excruciating, extraordinarily drawn out.
Right.
I think the choice to perform the songs in a kind of like talk, sing, whisper mode, as opposed to the traditional dramatic kind of 80-yard sing at the top of your register approach, which Lady Gaga does occasionally, but not often in Joaquin Phoenix.
She never gets to the Lady Gaga talent that
One time she gets close,
okay.
But for the most part, she sings in the same register that Joaquin sings in, which is this sort of gravelly and simple and spoken and quiet approach. But the movie itself, the pacing, the way that it's set up, and then especially, as you said, the conclusion of the movie feels like a direct repudiation of the success of the original movie and everything that everyone said about it. It seems like Todd Phillips became frustrated by people who said that this was an incel nightmare and was like, you misunderstood my intention. I'm going to show you that this is an unfeeling world and that when we have people in it who are overlooked, who are mentally unwell, who have been abused, that this is what can happen and that this is what this cracked society will then understand about themselves by raising a person like this up. You know what I mean? It's like the first movie is a big, bold comment on America. Whether it's sophisticated, whether it makes sense to you or you agree with it, we can debate that.
Yeah.
This movie is like, listen, Arthur Fleck has been kicked by the world. He's not a hero. He's not someone we should look up to. He's also just a sad reflection of the way that we treat each other in the world. Like, that's what this movie is about. And so the movie is just basically a sad, long follow through an awful person's awful life who's committed heinous crimes, who cannot be fixed, who cannot be really understood. There's occasionally a handful of people. The Catherine Keener character is clearly a stand-in for someone who's trying to better understand and protect this person, and that there are a handful of voices in the darkness. But he's essentially like punishing us for celebrating his movie.
Yeah.
And I can't recall many examples in the history of movies where a filmmaker who's had more success and who's had more of a just absolute gut-busting billion-dollar movie like Joker immediately just shoving in our face and saying, how do you like it? This is what I'm talking about. This is what it is. And he cuts it so interestingly with music. Not just with music, but with 50s and 60s jazz and pop standards, with Frank Sinatra songs, with songs you might hear Eartha Kitt or Ella Fitzgerald sing, with Sonny and Cher style
Yeah.
songs, with Burt Bacharach songs, with the sort of warmest, biggest, broadest, widest appealing mid-century American culture. It's a cool choice. It's an interesting idea. It's just not fun to watch, like, at all. And watching the movie, I was like, man, this guy fucking hates me.
Yeah.
He hates me, and he hates that I liked the first movie, and he hates that other people misunderstood it, and he really needs to double down on his point. So how do you even evaluate that?
Yeah, it's tough. So there's so many things there. Number one, the movie continues to harken back and pull you into a space, like even when they do the Sonny and Cher thing, the whole bit that they do. You're like, I've seen that. That always makes me feel good. Whatever. And then he reminds you, I don't want you to feel good. I don't want you to feel good. This is not to feel good. This is not for fun. I'm not doing this for you to feel good. I want you to feel bad.
Yes.
And I want you to feel bad. And the most, to me, interesting take on it is how he directly indicts the audience. So Arthur Fleck in the first movie is someone whose psychosis or his misdeeds, his grotesque acts that he commits are then taken up by people and used as something more. He becomes a symbol. He's raging against all of the dysfunction in Gotham and all of that. And in this movie, they just say, no, I did this because I wanted to. Joker isn't real. There's nothing more to it. I'm just an empty, sad, terrible person. And if you have found any greater meaning in that, that's on you. Everyone who believes in Arthur Fleck in this movie, like, loses faith in him. Gaga loses faith in Joker. Catherine Keener loses faith in actually Arthur Fleck. And at the end, he's just by himself bleeding on the floor. And that seems to be us. At the end, we're just left by ourselves, bleeding on the floor, asking, what the hell just happened here? You know? And so for me, spoiler alert, there's one scene in the movie where he keeps teasing, for the comic fan, he keeps teasing you with a greater Jokerness. And there's one scene where at the end of the trial, fucking place blows up. Two-Face is created. He literally has one side of his face.
The Harvey Dent character is affected by the explosion.
And one side of his face blows up. Come on, that was a little catnip for me. I was like, okay. And then Arthur Fleck escapes. He's picked up by these people. They're in Joker masks. And you're thinking, whoa, is this the start of Joker's gang? Is this the start of whatever's going to happen to make this character into somewhat of the character that we recognize from other Batman movies? And he rejects those people very directly. He had already rejected them in the courtroom. He rejects those people.
They attempt to save him and he leaves them.
He leaves them. He leaves them and he goes back to Lady Gaga. He rejects them, then she rejects him. And he is a man with no country. And that's Todd Phillips' point. And I get to that point and I go, oh, okay. But shouldn't I get something in the first 2 hours of the movie to make me feel aha about that? I got bad songs. I got incredibly tough to watch scenes, emaciated scenes. I think that there's a scene where the guards sexually assault him.
Yeah.
And so, like, the movie itself is just remarkably unwatchable, hard to watch. And I don't know how I'm supposed, what I'm supposed to get out of it. I get the point. I get what he's trying to say, but what do I get? Like, what do I get for going to see the movie?
Well, it's a fair question to ask, and it dovetails so much with whatever's been rattling around in my head about movies. And we can talk about it once we get past Joker Folie, but sort of like, what is the audience owed? And then what is the appropriate response to a movie feels very baked into the creative decisions of this movie. That doesn't always seem to be the case. Sometimes an artist is just like, I have a vision, I'm going to tell my story, the end.
And that's okay.
That's great. Sometimes an artist is like, what I like to do is entertain, maybe inform, but I like to entertain. And then sometimes somebody's like, I got a job and I got to do my job.
Right.
This isn't really any of those things. This is actually something that is a particular strike at least a segment of the audience of this movie. And in doing so, we're all affected. Like the shrapnel is everywhere.
Mhm.
So if you were anticipating the second Todd Phillips Joker movie, you were going to get... I'll be very surprised if there is a loud contingent of people who are like, I loved it. Because it's just not meant to be loved. It is meant to be understood, maybe. It's meant to make you feel kind of sadness about not just this character, but maybe like the way that we treat people in the world, the complete lack of empathy, all the things that were the point of the first film. But it isn't a good time. And to tease us with some of these songs and it's not just that one moment where they have this sort of Sonny and Cher sing along. There's a couple of other songs here, and we can talk about some of the songs. But, for example, the one time I got chills while watching this movie was when Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered is being sung by Arthur Fleck.
Yeah.
And I think it was the moment during the TV interview. And
he's singing it, and then she's watching him on the television.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Gaga Harley Quinn character is watching him on TVs in a storefront while he's being interviewed by a TV newscaster played by Steve Coogan in the days, hours leading up to his trial. And as is so often the case, the Joker character bursts into song in the middle of the movie. Doesn't burst so much as sort of slowly begin to croak a song. And he sings Bewitched, which is, Frank Sinatra standard. And the orchestra swells and the song gets big. And what we see is really Harley Quinn making a deeper connection with Joker through a television screen. And that's like a communication of his magnetism, this undeniable thing that obviously Joaquin as a performer has, that the Joker creation has. It's in a weird way, sort of a justification of the misunderstanding of Arthur Fleck's life and intentions. And I was like, okay, I see what he's doing now. That this is maybe this is more like Network. Maybe this is going to be more like a movie about the power of media and what media can do to distort our brains, and that we all are waiting for a call to action. And it doesn't hurt that I really like the song Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. I think it's one of the best musical performances in the movie. But he doesn't follow through on that moment at all. And we do get a number of other performances. We hear For Once in My Life, the Stevie Wonder song. We hear I've Got the World on a String. We hear Close to You. We hear The Joker by Shirley Bassey. We hear That's Entertainment. That is another core theme of the movie.
That undergirds the movie.
Yeah.
That particular song, it's almost as if they're selling you on the idea of what you see in the world and how you worship those things. It's all fake. It's all entertainment. And the characters in our actual world that we vault to these, that it's all bullshit. That is what the main theme of the movie seems to be.
It is the theme of the movie. We see early on the scene from the bandwagon where That's Entertainment is performed, and then the film has this kind of conclusive moment between Harley Quinn and Joker featuring That's Entertainment. And I get the point. I'm certainly guilty of idolatry and lifting people up who are ultimately not that important to our society, and maybe overlooking some other things. It is our whole life,
right?
As I, ride the high of a Mets playoff run, as I think about the works of Francis Ford Coppola,
the fucking Superman Christopher Reeve documentary commercial came on.
Yeah,
I fucking cried.
Yeah,
I got weepy, real. Actual tears.
I think it's
44 years old.
I think that's okay if you have the self-awareness to laugh about it. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't know if the movie thinks it's not okay. I think obviously the movie is talking about there's extremes to this. If you are, for example, blowing up a courtroom and attempting to free your face-painted Avenger, that's not really where you want to go. But I'm not sure where the extremes are. I'm not sure what is the limitations. If you host a fandom podcast, are you guilty of the sins that Todd Phillips has outlined here?
Without a doubt. And I'll tell you, and part of this is an indictment on the fanboys as well. And Todd Phillips has been doing this. He's kicked the fanboys in the nuts twice. I'll just be honest with you. He's kicked us in the nuts.
Speak on it, yeah.
He's kicked the fanboys in the nuts twice. He kicked us in the nuts with the first movie with, I tweeted something, and I didn't expect the tweet to be as big of a deal as it was.
Okay. Did you go viral?
I went viral with this tweet. Okay. And what I said is like, is this Joker gonna scheme or plot or do anything, or is he just gonna laugh and crash out for 2 hours? And everyone, there was a very healthy argument about what you should expect from this movie, especially after the filmmaker has told you what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
That he's using this world, this backdrop as more of a conceit than anything else.
Yep.
He's not giving you what you want. So stop trying to see the Killing Joke or the Dark Knight Strikes Back. It's not any of that stuff. The Dark Knight Returns is any of that stuff. It's not what he's doing. He's doing something different. And in this, when I watch it, there is no. He washed this movie of the DNA of anything that really has to do with DC, and he's actually interrogating the very nature of being a fanboy in this movie. Everybody who's a fanboy in this movie loses. Arthur turns his back on them. Arthur's by himself. They are by themselves. You believe in nothing. It's all just entertainment. And what is real? And what is real is the fact that this guy lives in a society where he had no help, where no one cared about him, where he was constantly abused, where he was taken advantage of, where he was made a victim that became an aggressor that ends up dead on the floor of a prison with no greater meaning, with no greater ministry, with no greater message, and you just got to live with it because that's how life goes.
You know what's tricky about it, though? I think you're 100% right. That's clearly the intention, and he hammers it home a second time. He doesn't really give us what we want, despite showing us Harvey Dent, despite showing us Arkham Asylum, despite showing us these things that are signifiers
Wayne
of
building,
a certain kind.
all of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Stuff. But a movie that I think is ultimately about a cry for empathy ultimately just feels nihilistic.
Of course.
It doesn't feel like what can happen if you extend a hand. It only feels like here's what happens if we continue to kick each other. Doesn't mean it's not worth portraying, but it has no texture beyond that. It's only one thing. And I guess it's a worthy pursuit. Like, I'm trying to be open-minded about this.
There is one scene in the movie that I thought was really, really moving. And it didn't have anything to do with Lady Gaga. It didn't have anything to do. It had to do with the actual person in the movie that I feel like the movie's talking about. And that's the Gary Puddles character. When he's on the stand and he is just living in this horror.
He's traumatized.
He's traumatized from someone who he legitimately had an affinity for. And they're talking past each other. Like, well, Arthur's telling him, I'll let you live. Like, I didn't kill you. You're good. He goes, no, I'm not good. Like, I can't sleep. I can't do anything. I'm a prisoner of this moment that you put me through. And the messed up thing about it is you were the only person that was ever good to me. You were the only person that was ever good to me. And now you have become my albatross. You have become my nightmare. You have become this. In my life, I'm completely alone because of who I am in this society. I had one person that treated me good, and now that person is my Freddy Krueger. He's exasperated at Arthur. Arthur is exasperated at him. And you wonder, like, who's responsible for all of this fucked upness? Like, that scene when he was walking away, I was actually moved. I was sad. That's the first time in the movie I ever felt any emotion because I had lost the ability to feel any emotion for Arthur. I couldn't feel anything for him anymore because he killed a bunch of people. And I get that he had a tough life, but either he's gonna go on to fucking fight Batman, or he's just a fucking spree killer that it's hard for me to feel empathy for.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out as I was watching the movie, and I ask this because the movie is multiple different things. It's a grim character study. It's a prison movie. It's this jukebox musical we're talking about. It's a cracked love story. It's really an epic tragedy, but for the most part, it's a courtroom drama. It's a movie that takes place in a courtroom.
The best parts of it are certainly that. The movie actually is nothing until we get into the courtroom.
And that is when Joaquin Phoenix is given license to kind of come alive in the ways that were so exciting in the first movie, that like he feels his most theatrical, his most over the top. The story, it has some tension there. And so what I was wondering about was, is this movie an attempt to have like a strong point of view on the justice system or like the way that we treat criminals? You know, like Arthur is on trial for his life, and if he is convicted, he will be like electrocuted. You know, that's really he's going to the chair. And I still don't. I don't really know. It's really hard to parse. Like, is that not? Is this film against the death penalty? Is it for it? Is it against the way that the penal system works? Is it, he is mistreated in prison, but he's also given all of these special privileges. He's treated as a kind of like a mascot. And that shows us like what we think about how the world treats a person like Arthur Fleck. But what does it mean about anything else that isn't Arthur Fleck? I don't really feel like it had any depth trying to explore any of those things. And it uses them as a tool to make its point, but it doesn't have like any character beyond that. And that's one of the reasons why a movie like this can feel dull. Like if a movie is about a few other things, if it has a few more ideas, or if it's a little bit more exciting to your point, it'll work. It's just hard to come out of a movie like this and not just feel like, well, I guess fuck us, fuck me, fuck everything.
Like,
yeah.
To your point, even about like prison. So there's one scene where they're walking, him and Brendan Gleeson are walking, and they've just had an interaction that was pretty rosy. And it feels like they're okay. And he slaps him on the back like, thanks, pal. And Brendan Gleeson slaps the fucking shit out of him. And the movie is continuously doing that to the audience. It's continuously making the audience think that something is okay or that there's an actual moment of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just knocks the shit out of you and reminds you, this sucks. This guy's life sucks, right? And it makes that point very well. It's not without artistic merit. It's incredibly well made, as it would be. You know what it kind of reminds me of? So Adam McKay makes his dramatic turn. It goes from, the first one was The Big Short, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after The Big Short, there's Vice. Now I go into Vice and I'm very excited about it because if there's anybody in the world who you can make a compelling biopic on, especially with the right point of view, it's Dick Cheney. And when I left Vice, I was like, not quite. Good, like good.
I was in a very similar place.
Like
good performances.
Yeah.
There's a kind of energy to the movie, sort of similar to this movie where I'm like, I get your point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that made it a good movie. I'm not sure it made it like strong enough to have spent all this time and effort on it.
Yeah, I'm like, just not quite, like not quite. And when a director that's been not bottled up doing comedy or has done comedy for a long time, they're gonna take a chance like this. And when they take this chance, they normally, there's always one to me like this that's a little wonky, that just doesn't feel like it's for the moviegoer at all, or that the story reconciles itself like at all. And this one, it kind of seemed like a dissertation or a lecture to the audience more than it did actually a film.
I agree. It's funny that you bring up Adam McKay. I'm kind of a Don't Look Up defender.
I didn't hate it.
Kind of a defender. I think it's comedy is its weakest parts. And the best part about it, especially in like sort of the final 5 to 10 minutes, is that its real point is like, hey, like live inside your own life, like appreciate what we have. Don't take the world at large for granted, and don't take these relationships that we have for granted. It's a bit saccharine, but whatever. At the time of my life when I saw it, I was like, this is real shit. This is making me feel good. This movie doesn't have any of that. This movie doesn't have that turn. It just has this moribund sadness. It just has this incredible violence with no resolution, with no feeling beyond, yeah, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. You're going to get stabbed. You're going to get blown up. You're going to get broken up with. You're going to get mocked.
And you're going to be by yourself.
Yeah. The Joker thing is tripping me up a little bit, though, because as I thought about like the history of what I'll call like a fuck you movie, like filmmakers make fuck you movies where they're mad at the world or they feel another artist has represented their view and that kind of anger is right. Like Requiem for a Dream is a fuck you movie.
Really?
That's a movie that's like their addiction is an evil that can destroy everything, and let me show you its destruction. You know what I mean?
But don't you feel like in that particular, and I get it, but don't you feel like in that particular movie, it takes something that we all understand. We've all known someone who's dealt with addiction. We all know someone who's been in a situation that they can't get out of. And watching a descent into madness like that, or watching a snapshot in the madness of someone, it leaves you looking at the world in a different or a more sober. You come away with something. Is what I'm saying. When you watch Requiem for a Dream, you don't think so.
Well, you do come away. To me, it's you come away with the like extremity of the filmmaking and a couple of the images that he chooses to show you. Like what happens to Jennifer Connelly's character, what happens to Ellen Burstyn's character. The epic tragedy of that movie feels somewhat similar to this movie. I think Requiem for a Dream is a quote unquote better film. It's a movie that I think is more accomplished. But at the end of it, this is also true of like Lars von Trier's Antichrist, or even something as commercial as Seven, where when you get to the end of Seven, and you're like, well, what have we learned here? I mean, it's an incredible thriller. It's literally one of my favorite movies of all time. But when we're looking at like huge themes, morality is a huge theme of Seven. Procedure is too. That makes the movie more interesting to me. There's more to hold on to. Like the way that we do the work that we do and how it intersects with our own morality. That's a cool idea. These movies, though, these like kind of bottomless pits of like frustrated morality, they're tough, man. They're like really hard to make successful.
They are. With Seven, what you have to me in the entire movie is a push-pull between a guy who's seen it all and a guy who thinks he wants to see it. And he's told over and over and over again, you don't want to see it. You don't want to see how bad it gets. And he's saying, nope, I came here because I want to do it. And he's being told, he's like, I'm leaving because you don't want to see how bad it gets. And for the whole movie, you're wondering, can this motherfucker actually deal with how bad it can get? Then you see that he can't, right? And so there is something that you take away from that. You go, well, I'm pretty good in the suburbs. Like, like like I don't want to see how bad it gets. I don't want to see like what could happen. With this one, it's like, okay, we haven't talked about Lady Gaga.
That was gonna be my kind of conclusive note of this conversation.
So, like with this one, there's nothing to me that anchors the movie in that way to where I can have the eureka moment or where I can go, oh, this guy finally like got to it. Schenectady, New York, tough watch, right? But there's a very deep existential, like almost I'll never watch a second of the movie again point. Even the emptiness that you feel with that movie is more nutritious than the emptiness that you feel with this.
I just think that the ideas and themes of that movie are way deeper, like about the performance of life
I get it.
And, like how you go through the motions and what you long for versus what you should have. Like that's a movie but I hear what you're saying, which is that when you get to the end of a movie like that, you feel scooped out.
Yeah, but you feel like, wow, it feels worth it.
Yes. Hard-won conclusion of the film.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't have
to talk about it.
Yeah,
if you haven't seen Synecdoche, New York, you should see it. It's a very good movie.
Just make sure that you're in a good time in your life.
Yeah, be in a gurney when you watch it.
Yeah, like just don't like, watch it on vacation.
Don't do that.
Well, no, I'm saying watch it when you can go jet ski after. And
right.
Because if you don't, that's good. Like I saw that movie, like when that movie sent me into a little bit of a spiral. I'm like, well, what the fuck is
We should
happening?
do top 5 post-screening jet ski movies. That's a really good idea. I wish I had thought of that for this episode. It's a great concept.
Because it's like that's one that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Lady Gaga.
Well, you had mentioned that you were a big fan of hers. I would say I'm a fan too. I love A Star Is Born, the Bradley Cooper remake. I guess reasonably a fan of her music. There's nothing about it that I don't like, but I don't follow it closely. I'm more interested in movies. Her movie career has been, I would say, up and down. It's been interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure I understand why she wanted to do this film. We know that she does like standards, that she did perform with Tony Bennett and that she's, just genuinely an amazing singer. Performance-wise, it does ask her to kind of strip down in a way. She's not really wearing a lot of makeup through much of this film. She's got this kind of streaked, bleach blonde hair. I'm sure that the opportunity to make a big movie across someone like Joaquin Phoenix is very exciting. And she gets a moment or two of big performance, but because of the otherwise restrained performance style and the complete dourness and the fact that by the conclusion of the movie, she basically just disappears like a spirit. I couldn't really figure out what she was attracted to in the story.
Bruh, I swear to God, I'm thinking, how'd they sell her on this?
It's very strange.
Because you could have got Sabrina Carpenter. And you know what I mean? You could have saved bread. Like it's like what? Like how? I'm really
trying to picture that. I'm trying to picture Sabrina Carpenter talking to Joaquin Phoenix.
Well,
at least Lady Gaga has gravitas.
Well, what I'm saying is like, what was it about this that they say? Okay, we're gonna do the second one, Joker, Harley Quinn musical, and she went, I'm in.
It feels like that,
right?
Yeah,
but
because on paper it's a cool idea.
On paper, it's a very cool idea, but it wasn't a very competent use of her talents. She is inconsequential to the movie in a way that when she just decides that she no longer has faith in him, when she walks out on him, it doesn't feel like it matters that much. I guess.
I mean, I agree. She doesn't really influence his decision-making in a meaningful way. At least at first she does, and then he changes his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of disappears from the center of the story. The other thing is that the character itself, we get competing ideas about what is true about her character. We hear from Catherine Keener that she knows the truth and that it's different than what Harley has told.
And that just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's never really resolved. There's no clarity around it.
She says he calls her on it, and she goes, "Yeah, well, I made it all up."
And she said, "I told some lies."
Yeah, it doesn't
we
matter.
We all lie sometimes.
Yeah.
So in general, she's not bad.
No.
And I'm sure she will get a lot more people to go see this movie because she has such a strong fan base. It's weird. I actually, ultimately, I think I respect this movie, but I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I respect that it really stuck to its guns, for lack of a better phrase. It really was like, guess what? We're going to give you a big, bold musical starring Lady Gaga, but she's really never going to hit the Lady Gaga note that you want to hear her hit. That takes guts, That takes a kind of like stick-to-itiveness that is rare in especially like genre and IP filmmaking, and this is technically both of those things.
It is. I agree. I think that I like that this movie was made, but I don't like this movie.
Yeah.
This movie is the idea of what they've done with the Joker. It's important to us comic book fanboys for people to take this stuff and interpret it in different ways, and put it out there in different ways. All of this storytelling is so fundamental to me that having people that say, okay, I want to look at this in this way, or I want to take it and translate it culturally in a different way, it's all very important. They moves the genre forward. I think it does a lot for expanding it to people who might be artsy-fartsy in a way or whatever. At the end of the day, it's and we talk about this with some other films, it's well made, not good movie.
A well-made, not good movie is kind of where I think we both land on this.
Yeah, like well-made, not good movie. I went to Greece. We went to Greece. We went to Santorini.
Mm-hmm.
And real quick, we went to Greece. We went to Santorini.
Incredible pivot.
A couple years ago.
Okay.
Kalik and I, we went to Greece. We went to Santorini.
How nice for you. Europe? I feel like I'm never going back. I'm having a little kid, man. I'm like, will I ever return to Europe in my life? I don't know.
There's kids everywhere there.
But were they born there? Are people bringing these children overseas?
They were bringing some of the kids. Don't get me started on that because I got in trouble by talking about. I think there should be a whole month in these vacation.
No kid month.
We're no kid month.
Okay,
but
so just August. We actually can't do August because kids are off from school.
Yeah.
How about every May?
Every May, no kid month.
Kids.
Okay,
I like it. This is a great take.
And then we actually support nannies.
But I don't understand. You're saying like to the other countries? Like, can you travel to cities in America during No Kid Month?
It should be roving no kid.
Oh, I see.
So
like a rolling situation.
Yeah.
So we'll just remove all of the children from the states and countries at those times.
Like native children are okay. Indigenous children are okay.
You really are the GOAT. This is some weird shit.
Indigenous children are okay. We walked by this fish house that was there. We stopped. We had a very simple meal of white fish from out of the sea. So fresh, so amazing, so well seasoned, and different things. Best bread, best wine from this little place that was like right outside the hotel. Then, as the concierge at the hotel and the people there were telling us where we should go, they said, this restaurant right here is not only the best restaurant in Santorini, it is the best restaurant maybe in the world. And I can't remember the name of it, right? It like you get there and there's a whole tasting menu with a story on it and they're bringing you the best wine. It's the whole deal. I got sick.
Because you ate too much or because the food wasn't good?
Because it just didn't agree with me.
Okay.
So there is no doubt about the fact that from an artistic and culinary perspective, the restaurant that was doing all of that and had that much to say is a better restaurant than the fish house where I had some of the best fish outside of my time growing up in South Louisiana, where you're going to get the best seafood maybe in the world. But this other restaurant, it just didn't agree with me. The wine was all of that. I just ate it and I'm like, it didn't agree with me. So the Joker didn't agree with me.
You're making a point that segues so beautifully into what I want to talk to you about. And I feel like you are the best person to talk to about this. And you said, let's talk about it. I shared some thoughts on Twitter over the weekend about the state of movies, which is always a huge mistake, but it's something for whatever reason I could not resist the urge to share these feelings that I was having in a down moment. So I shared them, and I think that this movie and the experience of this movie is an interesting kind of litmus test. Another thing that had me thinking about these thoughts was recently you and Joanna Robinson did an episode of Ringerverse about The Last Jedi and about the sort of long ongoing debate. And I think that The Last Jedi is kind of like, if not Patient Zero, one of the signature movies that has defined roughly like the internet history of movie discussion. I'm a participant in this.
Right.
Host a movie podcast, have a lot of opinions about movies, talk about them every day. But this year I've been feeling like the typical like kind of rage baiting and extrapolation of ideas and the hyperbole around movies in either direction is like getting way louder and way noisier. And there's been a handful of movies that I've seen that I felt like it has really become like, I've been under the microscope with this. You know, I see like Civil War, Long Legs, Trap, The Substance, which I know you haven't seen, but you're going to see soon.
Yeah,
Megalopolis being a most recent example of this. I don't know that Joker Folie will fall into this category, but it could, in part because you're going to have a lot of people going into the movie with a certain level of expectation, and they're going to come out having realized that the joke was on them.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking about this, and I'm like, what I don't want to do is try to indicate to people, you know, some sort of bullshit bromide about why can't we all just get along. That's not really what I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to say like, we need a more civil discourse in our movie culture. That's phony, and I know better. And frankly, that doesn't benefit me or this podcast. But I am trying to figure out like what changed where I've got people literally saying to me, I can't trust you anymore because of your opinion on Trap, which I said was a deeply flawed but fun movie that I liked. And the kind of anger that is being provoked because of mediocrity or complexity in a movie, I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Now, I would say, honestly, play in the sandbox much more frequently because you cover IP so closely. You cover Marvel so closely. You cover Star Wars so closely. These are like hotly contested areas. And I think one of the reasons why this level of intensity in the conversation about movies has seeped into like Civil War and Trap is a lot of the like learned behaviors of the IP world. You know, like what I call like a religiosity around IP.
Yeah.
And some of it is just like you're online. If you just like call somebody a dick online, then you're going to get whatever, more karma. And that's better than just being like, well, I have a nuanced opinion of this complex idea and I'd like to share it with you in a thoughtful way. Like, obviously that's not how our culture works. I know that. But I'm trying to figure out how I feel about it. I'm trying to figure out what happened. Like, I'm trying to also not catastrophize and overstate things.
It's interesting. What was the most tense moment we ever had? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember this very well. And we never talked about it publicly.
Yeah.
It was before was it before Creed in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
So before the live rewatchables, see, I think back on this fondly too.
I do too. Yeah.
But it was before the show. We're in the green room and we were about to do Creed. And we got into a discussion about Killers of the Flower Moon, its failure, quote unquote failure at the box office. Martin Scorsese's comments on Marvel over the years.
Right.
And then also maybe like movie culture's complicated relationship between Scorsese and comic book movies and everything else. And we were both pretty heated.
it got to a point to where I feel like we're all in the green room before we're going out to Creed. And it got to a point to where I actually felt like the other people in the room started to get uncomfortable.
They were uncomfortable. Bill was uncomfortable. Chris was uncomfortable. But I think actually deep down, you and I were like, this is cool. It's all good.
This is what we do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that is indicative of the conversation because I'm playing for my team there. I'm playing for my team, which is Martin Scorsese, for some reason, is kicking my stuff in the ass every time that he gets in front of a mic. And then he puts out Killers of the Flower Moon, and I went into the movie looking for reasons not to like it.
Right.
And then I reveled in the fact that the movie either didn't get any awards or underperformed at the box office. When the point of that movie, if we talk about all of these films, it really wasn't. He had a blank check from Apple, which Apple was writing
a lot of those.
A lot of blank checks. He had a blank check for Apple to do whatever he wanted, and he did what the fuck he wanted to do.
Yep.
And in that is the success of the movie. The movie can't be bad, right? It's him, Leonardo DiCaprio.
When we were having this fight, first of all, shout out to you for just being just a good soul, because you knew that was my point, and I knew what your point was, and I also love Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah.
So it's like ultimately the nuance when you're a person that is face to face with another person is like, we can fight and it'll be fine. It'll be funny.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of secretly knows the truth. You know that everything is ultimately in the middle.
Right.
And, but we feel the need to be like entrenched in our opinions.
This is the issue. The issue is these conversations, and I don't want to oversimplify it. What the radicalization of opinions online is doing is divorcing us from our ability to be in good faith.
But do you feel like a bad actor in that equation? Because
a little bit.
I think I am too.
Well, a little bit.
So what am I talking about?
So no, of course I am. And that's why it's important. That's why Charles is important to the Midnight Boys, right?
Yeah.
That's why
I feel similarly about Amanda on this show.
That's why Charles is important to the Midnight Boys. That's why even if Chuck devolves into bad faith sometimes, it's important to round out these conversations to where you get good faith out of a diversity of opinions and approaches, right? It's important to have that because a lot of times now we're shoved into corners. I used to watch a movie, especially when there was no conversation around a film, right? I used to watch a movie and like the movie or dislike the movie for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes you like a film because of the moment in your life that you come to it. Sometimes you like, they're really big stories that are talking to one person, and then there are really small stories that are talking to everyone. At the end of The Karate Kid, which is essentially about a fucking kid in the valley getting bullied, so he learns to do karate. That's all the movie is about.
Great idea for a movie.
Great idea for a movie.
Long Island's Ralph Macchio. Thank you.
Right, and he has an old wise man. And then at the end of it, he crane kicks the guy, and you fucking feel like, why do I fucking care this much? And they can tell that same bitch over and over and over again. Then you have Megalopolis, which is a grand movie that's really trying to talk to everybody individually, and it kind of doesn't get there, but you come to the movie for different reasons, different times of your life, and it affects you in a different way. And because of the need for groupthink and team dynamics, we're losing the ability to like actually lean into that, to actually like have an individual feeling or thought about the movie. This is just, hey, for whatever reason, I have fun. What if you like M. Night Shyamalan's brand of storytelling?
I do.
You like it.
I just do.
You just like the way he does his thing.
Doesn't mean I think his movies are perfect.
No.
Doesn't mean some of his movies aren't bad.
What's that show that comes on Netflix with Tim Anderson? You guys never saw this? I Think You Should Leave. Have you ever watched that show?
Tim Robinson.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Tim Robinson.
I Think You Should Leave.
I Think You Should Leave. Have you ever seen that? Okay, I think it's fucking hysterical.
Me too.
Like legitimately, I think it's fucking hysterical. I've had my brother watch it. I've had Kaliko watch it. I've had my mother watch it. I've had so many people watch it, and they go, "Man, yo, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Like it doesn't. We don't have the internet, which should be this place where we all express our individuality. It breeds this toxic sameness that chokes conversation. And to me, that's, I don't want to bemoan. I'm not old man shouting at cloud bemoaning the internet. yo, you went to Trapped. You fucked with it. You like how he tells stories. The worst movie to him that he makes, the most movie to you that he makes is only going to be so bad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that way about the Russo brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know,
you're pro Gray Man.
Wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
That's pretty bad.
See, to me, if you were
it's not super bad. But it's not super bad. It was fun. If I'd have went to the theaters to see Gray Man, I probably would have been fucked up.
I think there is a differentiation, and it's honestly middling. It's not a huge difference, but I've always understood and in some ways empathize for your happiness around a comic book story, like a comic book movie, where even when we talked about The Flash last year, which I thought was just like abysmal and had me using the hyperbole.
I culted myself into The Flash, though. I apologize.
But it's okay because you were like, there's a part of me that is so connected to these stories that I love it. And I don't, it makes you want to find excuses for it, and because it's something you care about. That's actually different to me than the Russo brothers. The Russo brothers were tools inside of a machine, the same way that like people who work for Martin Scorsese are tools inside of the Martin Scorsese machine. And there's a kind of differentiation there. That's a relatively new concept.
But we also know now that that's not easy.
Which part?
The Russo brothers. It's not easy for them to make
they
competent
achieved
films
inside that machine.
Yeah. Like out of that stuff. Not to cut you off.
No. But it's all relatively new, just like the internet is relatively new. I don't think like conversations about how the internet work are usually very helpful.
No.
But I do feel like we're in a place of we can never go back. We can never go back to that moment. And I feel like when we're on the rewatchables together, we always talk about like seeing a movie in 1991 or whatever, and we're like, wow, I was changed forever. And like, I don't even know if I had anybody to talk to about it. And that was weirdly energizing. Like I look back on it now and I'm like, how to be unaffected, to be uninformed was powerful.
It was.
And now it's the opposite, where with Megalopolis, not only is the movie 45 years in the making, but the discourse is like 5 years in the making. And the movie premieres at a festival, and then whether or not it's going to get distribution, and what was the screening like for the executives. The fact that those things are in our head when we sit down to watch the movie is just a fact of life. It's like it actually means it's like a new art form. It's not the same art form it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago because of all of the other inputs that we have when we evaluate these things. And because it's such a huge part of my life and my professional life now, I'm constantly evaluating like, should we even be reviewing movies the way that we review them, the way that Pauline Kael reviewed them? Like part of the idea of this show is like, it's a conversation. It's not a review. It's not criticism. It's a conversation about how we felt and how we felt, including all of those inputs. But the thing that I was flagging here was, man, people seem fucking mad right now. And it's like, it's an election year. Twitter's awful now. Reddit is crazy, and the wildest shit tends to get like, the highest approval. So I understand that the metrics have evolved or devolved, no matter how you see it, but something feels off in the conversation. And I don't know if it'll ever swing back, or if there ever was a back. Maybe there never was.
Well, first of all, there have to be people who are brave enough to like and dislike things. That's the first thing, right?
Agree.
You have to be brave enough to like and dislike things. All right. And also, you have to be pliable. I think it's important for the people that are at the tip of the spear in all these conversations to understand what it means to have really honest, unvarnished conversations about things that they might have liked or disliked, right? It's okay if you like it. It's okay if you dislike it, right? Some of these things are cultural, and the culture wars are infecting all of this stuff. One thing about Megalopolis is like, there are people who don't want to see Shia LaBeouf in the movie. There are people who don't want to see Jon Voight in the movie. There's stories about Francis's conduct on set. Then the movie itself starts to be a litmus test for whether or not you're a good person, even if you just fucking go to the movie.
It's a great point.
Even if you just fucking sit down and watch it, right? Like, why are you watching it? Why are you supporting this? Why are you supporting that? These are things we did not have to consider before. The Joker was one of those things. Joker became a movie to where if you said, it was all right, like I would, then you were fucking an incel. And I'm like, what? Like, I've seen this movie before. They did this in Taxi Driver. They did this in Falling Down. White dude goes crazy and starts fucking shit up is not an unfamiliar film. Every generation has its film of some character reacting to the dysfunction in society. It just is what it is.
You can read The Matrix like that.
You definitely can read The Matrix like that, right? So it's, and to me, I think the importance of us, and if what we do is important, is that we just got to be honest about the way we feel about shit.
It's so hard though. I'll give you an example of the nuance here. This is my own creation and my own mistake, but like we're so back as a joke, as a bit, as an ongoing thing in the movie culture, in all culture.
Yeah.
It's always uttered with a sly or not so sly smile, but it becomes transmogrified into you're a cheerleader. You only want to puff something up, or not understanding what I hope is the nuance of a joke, that like the consistent destruction of movie going and movie discourse is a kind of a thematic of the show. But like, it's my fault, you know what I mean? And was I like engagement farming by doing we're so back bits on the show? I guess. So where's the line between fun and bad faith?
There's no line. Sometimes it's just fun. And something else that people have to understand about filmmakers. You've talked to a lot of filmmakers, right?
Yeah, hundreds.
Filmmakers tell stories. This is going to sound stupid. Filmmakers tell stories in different ways, but let me tell you what I mean by this. It sounds very simplistic. I was talking to somebody who makes huge films, gigantic films. And I was talking to them about their relationship with somebody very important in their life. And they were talking about the relationship in such an intimate way that I was like, hey man, you should make that movie. And he told me if I made it, it wouldn't come out in the way that you think it would. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, if I made that story, it would be Star Wars. It would be that, it would be grounded. It wouldn't be a small character study, three people in the movie.
Why did they say that?
Because that's not their sensibility.
Oh, I see.
Their sensibility is the big popcorn act. That's the type of stories that they tell. And even if they were going to tell a story about fathers and sons, it would be Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it would come out. It would come out, Luke, I am your father, and then the relationship with all of this other stuff happening. It wouldn't be this boy's life. It wouldn't be he got game. It wouldn't be the smaller. That's just not the way they tell story. That's not the way they see movies. So a lot of movies that you're looking at are these people who have this idea that goes, you know what? I want to tell a story about this abusive aunt that I had, or this whatever thing that I had. And then it becomes this. Yeah. David Chase wants to tell a story about him and his mother, and it gets wrapped in all of this mafioso type of stuff, and it becomes The Sopranos. And when we start trying to litigate everything online about whether or not something is purely good, purely bad, purely up, purely down, we're also kind of creatively neutering a lot of people who fundamentally look at story in a couple of different ways. Like, Denis wants to tell a movie and he don't want nobody to talk. The dialogue is overrated. What? Aaron Sorkin wants to tell a movie and all they fucking do is talk.
But so you've put your finger on something that I think is important, and maybe this is sort of like a conclusive aspect of this conversation. What we're talking about is intention. Intention for me does matter when it comes to looking at something. It's not always the most important thing. Sometimes it's the least important thing, but I do want to understand it when I look at a piece of work. I want to understand. And if their intention is no intention, if it's free expression, I respect that too. But one of the reasons why I have directors on the show, or writers on the show, or even actors on the show sometimes, is because I want to know their intentions. I want to understand what they were trying to get up to. And I want to understand if they weren't able to achieve something, why they weren't able to achieve something. Or I want to understand specifically what you're talking about, and what you just described is exactly why I love horror movies, fantasy, comic book movies, action movies, is using genre as a portal to telling those kinds of stories, those kinds of ideas. But some people don't agree. Some people are like, fuck your intentions. Did you make a good movie?
I mean, I get that.
That's all that they care about. And so you get into this slipstream of like, why can't you just tell me this movie sucks? Like, people are just like, yo, Megalopolis fucking sucks.
But what is good though? Is good an Oreo cookie, or is good a filet mignon
Mona Lisa?
Steak? Yeah. Like what is good? It's good because
there is no good. Yeah, of course.
Right. It's good
There's
because
good for you.
Tastes good, or is good because it's nutritious, or like what's good, and then good changes.
Yeah.
I I used to eat burgers from all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I came to LA and they started baking their own buns and doing all kinds of stuff. You can't give me one of them cheap burgers no more.
Are you hungry? You keep circling back to the food metaphors.
I'm just saying, like, you can't give me those cheap burgers no more. Like, it's my idea of good has changed.
Yeah.
And so,
because you're bougie now. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Shit fucking changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I feel about movies. I'm like, I've seen them all now.
Right.
I'm bougie now.
And I would say that, just the last thing I'll say that it's important for people, in my opinion, who love movies to have elastic minds when it comes to movies.
Agree.
If I'm not trying to watch that boring shit, because
what's that boring shit?
We judge people, right?
Uh-huh.
If I show you The Big Lebowski and you say you don't like it,
mm-hmm.
there's a part of me that goes,
we're not boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll never truly understand each other.
Yeah, like, there's a part of me that goes, so you mean you tell me you watch this shit and it's just not funny? All right, okay. Well, you're dumb.
But do you say that to your mom about Tim Robinson?
No, and I'll tell you why. There's a cutoff for this. Also, the Tim Robinson thing is just so out there.
That's extreme. Yeah.
There's also a cutoff for this.
Yeah.
Because she it's not just that she doesn't like him. He angers her.
Well, that, in a way, provoking that kind of reaction that's the flip side of the laughter. Right. I like that.
There's one sketch where it's him and Ao, and she's just asking him to breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe. And it's so funny to me. She's like, why wouldn't you breathe when he's in the VR? It's hysterical. And
That's a great sketch.
And my mother's going, son, why are we looking at this? Turn this off. And her disdain for it is making it funnier to me.
Yep.
So anyway, I think it's, as long as people are willing to have the conversation, I get told to fuck off on the internet 50 times a day, and it's by people who like me. So
this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this, is because you have no fear.
Yeah.
In fact, you seek it out.
But that was also like, that's also a byproduct of like TMZ. It's like
for sure.
Oh yeah, so you're on TMZ and you say something on TMZ, and then you like. I used to have people coming to the tour bus wanting to talk to me about things that I said on TMZ, and I'm like, dog, like I just got used to it.
Yeah.
I got used to it, and that's not to say that it's good. It's like I'm battle tested.
But you also know the levers to pull. I watch you pull levers every day on the internet, and I'm like, this is impressive. But you got skills.
But that's also for me to continue to build calluses.
Mm-hmm.
And these conversations aren't like, the big picture is a conversation about movies with a cultural critic who people really care about, like what it is that they say.
Yeah. And then there's me. There's the cultural critic. And
then, but like people really care about what they say. Like when I was growing up, I would watch Siskel and Ebert,
mm-hmm.
And I would really care what they thought.
Me too.
They could get me to go out and see a movie. It's kind of a different thing than the guy who deeply loves things and just wants to have fun.
You've reminded me of one last strain of this too. I could talk about this forever because it's obviously like my life's work. Like I'm so interested in it. But one of the reasons why it's my life's work, I think, is because Siskel and Ebert is a factor in this. And also I always cite Howard Stern and Mike and the Mad Dog as factors in this, which is that all three of those kind of media entities, which I was raised on, encouraged you to disagree.
Right.
In fact, it was trying to get you to have a reaction to what was being said. I just watched a segment of Siskel and Ebert for a movie that I won't spoil because we're doing it on the show soon. But Siskel was just so wrong about this movie that I couldn't believe it. But my reaction of like, God, he's so wrong, completely defies this entire conversation we've had where I'm like, there's nuance and he didn't understand this kind of storytelling and these kinds of movies didn't really ever make sense to him. And so of course he approached it from the wrong perspective. But there's this powerful primal energy that just saying something out loud gets people to do.
Yep.
And it I guess it continues on forever.
It does. It does. But that's why we have jobs, bro.
That's right. I won't say anything else to jinx it. Van Lathan, you are the best. Thank you so much.
Man.
Thanks to Jack Sanders. Thanks to our producer, Bobby Wagner, for his work on today's episode. Next week on the show, speaking of the past, we have the 1996 movie draft. We'll see you then.